I was scrolling through YouTube recently, going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, finding videos that I enjoyed watching, and I stumbled upon a really, what I thought was funny show. It was a British game show called What Would Your Kid Do? The premise of the show was very, very simple. The host brings out a very small child, just like under the age of reason, maybe around 4 or 5, and the child's parents are sitting in another room, free of influence over the child. The child is given 2 options, beautiful prizes that they could choose from, and whatever choice they make, the family would keep. Well, this one particular clip was pretty hilarious. They brought out this 5-year-old girl and sat her down in the chair, and the host said, "Okay, let us see the first prize that you will have. You and your family will win a beautiful, luxurious, all-expense-paid trip to Dubai." And the whole audience erupts. That you could see the camera pans over to the parents, and they're cheering in their room, and the kids getting all excited as well because, well, you know, the audience is clapping, and everybody's pretty happy. The host then goes, "All right, let's see. For your next prize, you will win a beautiful stuffed giraffe." The camera then pans to the parents, and the mother, lovingly knowing her child, says, "Oh no." After a brief moment of this child thinking about it, you could see her eyes were really, really just thinking hard. What should she do? You could tell the moment she made her decision, glared straight at the host and said, "I want the giraffe." It was pretty funny. The parents, obviously, big smile on their face, but just utterly defeated. And I couldn't help but think of this clip because in light of today's readings, how often do we do that? How often do we choose temporal goods, things that we can understand, at the expense of God's kingdom, at the expense of this luxurious, joyful, heavenly-filled place filled with community for, ourselves, our selfishness? The second reading today, St. Paul details the nature of love, that really, ultimately, love is a self-gift. Is a complete and total gift of the heart. It's not self-interested, it's not pompous, it's not jealous. It's entirely ordered to another. But at the very end, there's a really important part. He says that when we were once children, we all thought childish things, right? We were a little self-interested, thinking about the next time that we can be pleased or the next bit of entertainment. St. Paul says, there came a time that once he grew up, he had to set aside childish things. He had to set aside childish things. To love is to sacrifice, and that's not easy for anybody. We have to, in our interior journey, in our spiritual growth, we are all God's children. But as we continue to grow in our faith and in our relationship with Christ, we can't be hindered by the temporal pleasures of this world, which might seek to have us focus inward on our own hearts. We become really childish in those moments. Instead, the Lord is asking us to open our hearts to Him. In light of St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, we have this beautiful gospel today where Jesus has this interaction with the people of his hometown, his friends, his family, those whom he grew up with. And they were asking him, "Okay, who's this Jesus guy? Wasn't he the son of Joseph? Apparently he's this great miracle worker. He's done a ton of things in Capernaum. We want to see a little bit of the action, like what's going on." Jesus ultimately says no. Unlike Elijah the prophet, where he could have chosen any widow that was in Israel at the time, he went to the one in Zarephath. Unlike Elisha, where he could have cured many, many lepers, he went to Naaman, the Syrian. Why? Because ultimately, it's not God's miracles that we're worshiping. It's our relationship with him. It's the core of our love with him. What did they do? How did his people respond? They got mad. They threw a childish temper tantrum. They wanted to kill him because he wasn't willing to do the miraculous things that people were claiming he could. He knew their hearts. He knew the pride that would, envelop in their hearts. And, we have a prophet from the town of Nazareth. This is ultimately good for me, right? Instead, what we have is a foreshadowing of Jesus' passion, that in the midst of their fury, in the midst of them wanting to kill him, he passed right through them and went away. We have to be very careful, I think. We have to be on the defensive that if we allow our desires and our selfishness to overcome us, Jesus could very well pass from our midst. Our relationship would be hindered with him. Every small decision we make at the expense of another is really at the expense of the kingdom of God. So very much like that child who chooses the stuffed giraffe, she's going to look back on that clip one day and think, what was I thinking? I don't want that perspective in my relationship with Christ. I don't want to one day think, wow, think the kingdom of heaven, how beautiful that, what did I miss out on? So today, as we approach the altar to receive the Eucharist, think of one thing that might be hindering you in your relationship with God, one aspect of your life that maybe we can just release and trust over to God's providence. Hopefully, by doing so, we will enter into a deeper relationship with Christ, and we will grow in our faith, moving steadily away from the spiritual childhood into a spiritual fatherhood or motherhood, a spiritual journey that will ultimately lead us to the kingdom of heaven.